All right, now we are here for another week of the SCMP Live Chat and Q&A. You guys, we have two guys from the Fight Night Picks family, right? You guys are a family, right? You guys have deep roots, right? Like how far does it go back? John Franklin and the Craig Allen connection. Tell me something. Tell me some history.
I found out when I was about 25 that he was actually my father. So that's the only reason why we keep him around. No, when did we? We've kind of beat around it before, but obviously, everything kind of came together under the Loudmouth MMA podcast network. And we were involved in a number of different shows. Early Stoppage was the Wednesday show. And then I kind of hit a spot a few years ago where there was an opportunity to move up, kind of outside of MMA in my career. And I just didn't really have enough time for some of the shows. So we went on hiatus a little bit. We ended up over on Fight Night Picks and still doing the damn thing with Early Stoppage. When it actually happens, we're still doing the damn thing. But it's been a couple of years now, right, John?
It's been a couple of years. I'm not sure if we did more episodes of Early Stoppage on Loudmouth or if we've done more now on Fight Night Picks. They're certainly better on Fight Night Picks, so check them out. But yeah, it's been a minute. Craig and I would do some stuff over there, and I was like, we kind of are a yin and a yang. I'm old, he's young, he's analytics, I'm like gut. The ironic thing is Craig's younger than me, and he's more of a purist than I am. I'm like, the joke on our show is I'm half a casual. But yeah, we just found that we kind of fit well together.
Yeah, you guys do fit well together. It's a good balance. When you're the same person and you have the same ideas, the show never really works out well, right? It's just like you're just repeating each other. And yeah, man, somebody has to turn. Somebody has to be the heel, and I guess Craig is the heel. Are you the heel, Craig?
I don't know if I'm the heel. I mean, I feel like the heel right now, but I don't like to think of it that way. I mean, sometimes I actually, I kind of gave, younger brother Matt Allen, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight with his other work obligations. But with Matt, I kind of gave him a little bit of smack there last week talking about some of these predictions. Like I gave it to him pretty hard, and then you feel kind of bad about it. But, at the end of the day, I'm going to see him tomorrow. So it doesn't really mean
he's not the heel in the comments. That's for sure. They love Craig in the comments, boy. Not so much daddy. Not so much Craig's dad. They don't like him in the comments.
You know what I imagined? Like, this is what I imagined in my mind is that Craig and his brother Matt are like doing their Gracie Academy jiu-jitsu thing, but like they don't film it yet. They're just practicing it. So eventually, they're gonna do that, and I want that from you guys. You guys do the Fight Night Pick predictions and all of that and breakdowns, but I'm looking for like the after show, right? Like there's got to be another show coming soon, right? Like where you guys are like breaking down techniques in the basement in your house, something, man. I want to see that. Is that the evolution? I think John needs to produce this.
I mean, I think he does. Like, really, if you peel back the curtain, if we had the opportunity to go to the States, I think it'd be a whole lot different. Like, really, as far as content creation is concerned, as far as these big cards are concerned. And even when things run normally, I mean, how often do we get cards out this way? Like, I can count on one hand the amount that have been close by. Halifax 2017, Moncton 2018. And you also had UFC 220 Boston. So it's not like, the UFC comes around all that often that we can shoot some stuff like that. But I mean, the Basement Fight Club stuff, there are a lot of people out there that want to see the two Allen brothers go head to head, toe to toe, and they want to see the boxing match. So I don't know if that's the celebrity boxing. I think that's like the kids that thought that they were cool in high school boxing. Like that might be what it is. So you might have a small subsection of fans that want to see it. But yeah.
Let me tell you something, JHK. This guy's got my daughter-in-law out there in the sticks. Once he shows her the bright lights of the city, Vegas or Phoenix, where I live, oh, she's never going back. So they'll definitely be stateside if she ever even gets a whiff of the bright lights.
All right. Well, right in Korea, right, they have there's a former fighter. He was actually a good fighter, and he just, the career just didn't work out. He used to fight for Road. And now he's a YouTuber, but his YouTube channel is very successful because he talks mad shit. And that's really different from like Asian fighters. They don't really talk, Asian fighters, right? In the UFC. What Asian fighter have you seen that's just out there talking mad shit? None. There aren't any, right? Because it's like culturally, it doesn't fit. But this guy, he's on YouTube just talking mad shit. Like he's trained all over, right? He's been in Denver, he's been out in Thailand. He's, you know, he's seen a lot of the, you know, what the world has to offer. And then he comes back here and he's just like attacking everybody online, these YouTubers that come on and make predictions. And then now he's got this like little show going on called Keyboard Warrior Fighting Championship, where he brings people from the street and have them fight each other in the gym, and he records it all, refs it, everything. And it's just phenomenal, right? And he just like pre-fight interviews, post-fight interviews. I think that's something that, you know, someone could work on in the States, man. But, you know, I'm still a fan of felony fights. If you guys know what that is, go on YouTube and watch those 3-on-1s, 2-on-1s in the desert, right? Just go check it out. I'm just saying, you know, give some love to them. But if you guys are joining us right now live, make sure to hit that subscribe, you know, share, and, you know, the like and all of that good stuff. You're watching the replay, leave your comments down below, and I'll get to those eventually. Maybe not. I don't know. You know, it's just spontaneous stuff. So, yeah, if you guys are watching, just put your questions there. I see you guys got a couple questions already. Yeah, man, let's just jump right into it. Let's we got a comment. So this comment will lead into my first topic. It says Moreno and Diaz stole the show. So Moreno, of course, you know, he went in there, phenomenal job, great game plan. Figueiredo, a lot of people are pointing to the weight cut. I'm just thinking that he didn't make the right adjustments heading into the fight to win it. Moreno did, won the fight, right? I don't want to blame the weight cut. Too many people focus on that all the time. I want to focus on Nate Diaz, though, more, right? I want to start with you, John. Nate Diaz, he goes in there, loses for 4 rounds, and then has like a 30 seconds of, you know, of paradise in the cage. And then afterwards, everybody's thinking that Nate Diaz basically won the fight, right? No one's really cared about Leon Edwards. Nate Diaz, man, has he become this guy to where like he could lose like 50 fights and people are just going to still support him no matter what, even though he can't even speak a word of English?
You know, I'll tell you what, and on our show, we'll do this, and it's funny that I got out of it. I got it out of the way quickly. We referenced Chael Sonnen, right? Here's my first Chael reference. Chael says you've reached the highest pinnacle you can reach in fighting when no one cares about the result. And that's where Nate's at, right? Chael's been there, and all these different guys have been there. Nate and his brother have figured out how to fight their fight, which is to fight well enough that they can contest the outcome of it, right? Because nobody's going to finish these guys. I mean, who's ever finished a Diaz brother? But so they fight well enough to say, well, if this were on the street, or if this was that, or, you know, that's like saying my dad could beat up your dad. It holds no significance in reality. You're just saying something that's never going to happen. But they've maximized that, and they fight so infrequently that they can do that, because by the time, you know, for the couple of weeks in and around their fight, they're the biggest thing in the world. Then they go away for 2 years, and people forget they didn't look that great the last time they were out, because they have enough of a highlight to say, oh, yeah, man, if he had a couple more rounds, he had 5. How many more rounds does the guy need? And so, I mean, I'm with it. They have figured out how to game the system, and God bless them for it, man. They figured out how to maximize who they are.
Definitely. And yeah, just do you think, Craig, before the fight, right, in training camp, Nick Diaz was game planning for Nate, you know, how to beat Leon Edwards. And he told him, like, hey, just stand in the middle of the cage and turn your back to Leon Edwards, and let's just have fun with it, because people are going to love it.
Like, no, who does that? Why are we doing that? Like, you know, Nate Diaz is obviously going to get paid hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars to do stuff like this. But John, I totally agree with you. Like, how many rounds does the guy need? It's not a boxing match. There's not 8 or 12. Like, what are we doing here? So I watched the fight. I processed it. Ultimately, yeah, did Nate Diaz win the last round? Sure. So 49-46, 100%. I'm great with it. I actually went on a show earlier on this week. It's called The Link Podcast with Mike Zigo. And Mike framed it this way. I think Nate Diaz won the fight. And I think there's a lot of fans out there that think that Nate Diaz won that fight. So why don't we change the scoring just because of that fight? And we went down a tangent. We went down a different way, and we started talking about, okay, well, there's open scoring. There's what else? There's scoring the fight as a whole. There's a few different ways to do it. And that was more the way that the question was framed. But Yeah, I mean, listen, who gained more stock? Obviously, like Nate Diaz gained a ton of stock. Leon Edwards, is he going to get a title shot? I had to pull it up on YouTube. The UFC put a video out today called Leon Edwards and his fight with Nate Diaz and what's next. I don't know. Like, Carla Esparza should have got a title shot after she won her last fight. Is she going to get a title shot? Maybe. So it is a really weird spot if you're Leon Edwards. I hope he gets the opportunity. But for Nate Diaz, yeah, you can go out there and stunt for 4 rounds, cruise through a 5th round where he almost gets a finish win. And all of a sudden, he's still a fighter outside of the top 15 for everyone else, or in everybody else's mind's eye, I would think. But, I mean, what's his next fight? The loser of Luke Chiesa? Like, what do we do here? I don't know.
Let me just add this into the discussion, which is, if ever there was a guy that you were going to steal thunder from, it's Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards gets his thunder stolen by everyone, right? I mean, this guy could get a 1st-round knockout, deliver a baby, and save someone's life in the crowd, and they would still talk about somebody else first in the post-fight show. That's just the nature of being Leon Edwards. I mean, this guy does not get any of the due he deserves. Now, the one other thing I'll say about the Diaz brothers, they don't win a lot of fights, JHK, but they win a lot of nights. And I think he didn't win the fight, Nate Diaz, but he won the night. And that's how you end up being able to fight once every 3 years, still being profitable outside the cage, is you make everybody think that you did a hell of a lot better than you did. He didn't look great in the BMF fight. He didn't look all that great against Edwards, but we just have this narrative with the Diaz brothers that if you don't finish them, they somehow won because they twerked or they laid down in the cage or they rolled around or gave you the finger or whatever the Diaz brothers do, somehow changes the fight narrative. So,
John, Leon Edwards gave him the finger. We're not even talking about it. Like, that's how crazy it is.
Well, John, they did win a lot of nights, right? Probably a lot of nights outside the bar at a local Stockland, watering hole or something like that. And they're carrying that legend through the UFC throughout the years. But yeah, Nate Diaz and you, like you said, the Diaz brothers, they have got to the point of, no return. The no return point is like Chael Sonnen, like you said. And it's great for them, man. They're making money off of it. But like people talking about Galactus, right? He's saying that Nate keeps it 100. He does keep it 100, right? But he also creates a lot of lies too. Come on, you know what I mean? Like after the fight, how many excuses did he give for not winning that fight? Think about it, right? And I know that you keep it real and all of that, but come on, give some respect to Leon Edwards, right? Like he beat your ass for 4 rounds. 4 rounds he beat your ass, and you came in with like 1 punch, and then you sat there and you pointed at him like it was a funny thing. Like you're at the outside of a bar in Stockton, like you punched the dude and he like stumbled around and you're pointing at him like you're doing a world star. Like that's world star type of fight, right? That at the end. So him being in what's the definition of a real fight? Like what's a real fight? Should we just get rid of rules now? You know what I mean? Like let's just like, okay, let's go. I think Nate Diaz should just create his own promotion, right? And then have these people that consider what a real fight is go over there and fight. And maybe Jorge Masvidal's doing that right now with Gamebred Fighting Championship. Maybe he understands what a real fight is. But with Nate Diaz, I think he's got a couple more years in him. And whoever he fights next, it doesn't matter. I feel like Nate Diaz, strategically, he picked Leon Edwards because Leon Edwards could go take a dump in the middle of the octagon during the fight, and we'll still be talking about Nate Diaz won the fight, or not us, but the people who watched it and his fans, right? So who's next? I feel like there's not really a guy that he could pick on, right? Like a Leon Edwards that's like high up in the rankings. So he's gonna have to fight somebody that's gonna go in there and bring some craziness, some chaos to Nate Diaz. And who do you guys think, man? There's Michelle Pereira's out there calling out Nate Diaz. Dan Hooker's interested in a fight with Nate Diaz. Craig, if you could pick, you're the matchmaker for the UFC. What would be crazy? What would be the next, fight for Nate Diaz?
Khamzat Chimaev at 185 pounds. Book it. I mean, I don't know. Like Nate Diaz, I mean, could you make a third Conor fight? Well, you got to wait till Conor Poirier's done for the third time. So To me, it's really tricky, but you're right. I mean, it's got to be somebody that's on the periphery, or it's a 10 to 15 guy. It's a winnable opponent, just like the Pettis fight. I mean, Pettis struggles against pressure boxers, so something like that goes hand in hand. Who's a like, you wouldn't do Jeff Neal, would you? Is that too crazy? Like Neil Magny, maybe? It's tricky.
It's someone that you need to be. He needs to be able to talk back to Nate. You know what I mean? Go back and forth, and people would get aroused by it, right? It's all that arousal factor. That's what they want, right? That's what the UFC wants. Nate talks, the other guy comes back. Someone that's really good in that verbal warfare. John, come on. I know you got a good name, you know, swirling around in that little brain. Come on, let's go.
John's usually aroused by Alan Jouban at 170. It's a shame he retired, right?
I see you got the same haircut. What's up with that? Come on.
If you can't beat him, join him. So listen, Tony Ferguson is the guy that makes the most sense to me. They're both a couple of crazy, you know what's. Ferguson is out there. Nate's out there. Ferguson's on the decline. He's got a name. He's going to be in, you know, if Nate sits down, Tony will probably sit down. I mean, he'll do whatever, you know. I just think that what you got to do is you got to either give Nate someone who has a high enough ranking to get his interest or a big enough name to get his interest, because Nate knows he's going to bring the eyes. So he doesn't need somebody to bring the eyes unless the guy's not ranked. So he looks at it like, okay, what do I have to gain here? If I beat Leon Edwards, even though there's going to be zero pre-fight because Leon's not going to say anything, I'll bring the asses to put him in the seats, and Leon can just give me that number 3, that if I beat him now, I'm number 3. But I think that for me, it's probably like Ferguson. I don't hate Hooker Kevin Lee. Somebody like that has enough of a name, that's had a run in their day, that I think that's what would interest Nate. The only problem is he's not going to fight for 3 years, so who the hell knows who's going to be the guy then? Tony's the guy now, but he's not going to fight now, so who's going to be the guy in 2 or 3 years?
I've got my eyes right now on tiny Gary Copeland. Like, could he make 170?
Hey, is he getting bigger?
I think he's getting bigger, and the ref cam on his eyes is really scary. That's scary.
Oh, he's in there right now. Look at him. He looks like that guy from Star Trek. What's his name?
Beats me. The guy only does arm day, though.
Okay. Yeah, he does. Definitely does only the arm day. And he's more orange than Donald Trump. So we'll see who he's going for his tans. But with that, man, I just think like Nate Diaz, I feel like he will fight this year. I think that I think that this loss, he didn't really like it as much as his other losses, right? So I think he's going to get back in there as soon as possible. I think the UFC wants to keep him busy. And then, you know, James Lynch was telling me this theory that he has of Nate Diaz is that he wants to fight out his contract so he could go fight YouTubers. And it makes sense, right? If he wants to go make more money in one fight rather than 10 fights, fight YouTubers, right? Fight Jake Paul, fight Logan Paul, right? So
fight me.
Fight you, right? on Fight Night Picks, right? Like you could go on head to head. So maybe that's a possibility. Now, with Leon, should he be the backup for Usman Colby too? Like, what do you like this concept of backup fighters? Or should they be fighting somebody on the card? Should they be scheduled to fight? And then if something happens, they move up. John, what do you think of just being a backup fighter? What do you think about being the third wheel? You know what I mean? On a date.
I'm not crazy about being the third wheel on a date, but I would say this. I like having a backup more so than having a guy scheduled on the fight. Because one, you punish if the fight falls through. Now, 2 guys have not been punished. And obviously, one guy falls out. That's on him. But now the guy that was originally going to be the co-main event or third down from the top, he gets punished. But I think I like the third guy being there because he makes weight and really he has a lot of time on his hands to just sort of agitate the situation. Mm-hmm. So if, let's say now, Usman and Covington is a horrible example because they hate each other. There's going to be plenty to write about in the week of that fight with those two. But in a week where maybe there's not as much going on, you put the third guy in there to add something extra. You put him on the desk. He's showing up at the press conferences. You just put him in there just to agitate the situation if there's already not enough juice between the 2 guys. So I like the guy not having any other business to attend to and being just there to make weight and kind of annoy everybody.
Craig, what about the idea of setting up the fight with Leon versus Usman, and John makes a great point. That's a great idea, and have Colby as the agitator on the sidelines. Wouldn't that be even better?
Who makes more money? Who puts the butts in the seats? I think the Colby Usman rematch sells a lot more than Leon Edwards. Like Nate Diaz would make more sense to put in a fight like that. So I'm cool with the backups. You know, we've seen it before. Like I saw it over in the chat. I did a little bit of a peek there, but it's a good point. I mean, Glover did it for Izzy and Jan. You had Michael Chandler doing it for Gaethje and Habib. Who else? Wasn't there a backup for Darren Till and Tyron Woodley, if I'm not mistaken? I think was Usman the backup for that fight. Like, we've seen this before. I think it's just a good fail-safe. And then the added bonus is, well, if this fighter isn't too drawn out from the weight cut, they can still sit there. They can offer up, a bit of an agitation. At least you have them kind of close by. And if you need them to fill in, then they're there for that too. So I like it from that perspective. But Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman, like, is that I like the fight from purely a purist standpoint as far as the rankings are concerned, win streaks are concerned. It's a rematch. It's a good fight. To me, it makes sense on paper. But in an age where you need 2 title fights and a 5-round featured fight to sell a pay-per-view, is that really kind of what gets it done? Is that Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman too?
Nah, it's not. But it's a good idea. I think Colby, he just annoys everybody at one time, and him on the desk, and him just like walking around with like a, what is it? What are those things that you like, blow horns or whatever? Like, you know, I'd love to see it, man. I think, yeah, vuvuzela. Yeah, he get one of those like. He should get one of those like Ricola horns, you know, like remember in those old commercials, Ricola, boo, right? He should get one of those and just walk around with that. You know what I mean? Like just do his thing, right? But yeah, just moving on from that and talking about some negative. I don't know if it's negative news, but it's some bad news. Is that Yair Rodriguez, a guy that usually pulls out, he doesn't pull out this time, and it's Max Holloway. I don't even remember the last time Max Holloway pulled out from a fight, but I guess something happened. Do you guys know any details of it? And they're going to reschedule. Looks like they're going to reschedule it, but should someone just step in and fight Yair on the same date? John, let's start with you on this situation.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to see it because that was a hell of a fight. And, you know, we talk about Leon Edwards. We could make the same case for Yair Rodriguez. I mean, these are 2 guys that just seem like they got the world at their fingertips, and they just can't quite figure it out. They just can't line it up the right way to get to a title shot, to get, you know, everything sort of to come together for them. So Max Holloway would have been that aligning of the stars. If Yair Rodriguez, now, could he beat Max? That's a whole nother story. I mean, you know, it's a lot easier to get a fight booked with Max than to beat him. But, you know, heck, if he could beat him, then yeah, now things start to line up for him to maybe, be next in line after Volkanovski Ortega. Like that's why the fight gets booked. But he just, you know, I was going to say this about Edwards. We can make the same case about Yair Rodriguez. It's kind of like Chris Paul in basketball. The guy just can't seem to get everything lined up. He's 4-0 in the playoffs, sweeps the team out, and it's like, he's got COVID? What? And he's vaccinated? Like, how much bad luck can you have other than Chris Paul? Okay, you're Yair Rodriguez. You know, you're not Dana White's favorite. He just can't seem to make it happen. So I think it's unfortunate for Yair, but I think that maybe he needs to do his best to get a quick fight booked so that he can keep the train rolling.
Yair, man, is just he's been out for 2 years now, and USADA's been chasing him around with a needle, and he just doesn't want to get, you know, blood taken out, and it's just like Yair has just faded away, and he's lucky to get a matchup like this, but you know, bad luck for him. Do you keep this Yair on the card, Craig?
Well, he didn't want to end up like one half of the co-main event this weekend, Dan Ige, when you just have strange people showing up to your house with needles early in the morning. Did everybody forget about that story? That's insane. Like, that should be front page news this week. What about the guy that called him out on Twitter? What about Giga Chikadze? Like, I'd be down with that. Both guys are going to strike. They're going to bang. I'd be cool with it. Listen, Giga's one of those guys that he's always out there calling people out, and it gets a little bit of traction every now and again, but I'd be cool if that was a fight. I mean, that's a good tune-up for Yair, but it's also a good prove-me fight. I mean, Giga just knocked out or finished a great fighter, a legendary fighter, Cub Swanson. That win still holds a lot of water. Like, I thought Cub Swanson coming back from an ACL injury, over 35. I thought he was going to wilt under Daniel Pineda's pressure, and he didn't. So to me, that win that Chikadze had was huge. I'd love to see that fight with Yair Rodriguez, but if they can't make that happen, then yeah, just postpone the fight with Holloway and make it happen later on.
This could actually work into Holloway's favor, right? He doesn't have to fight, and he could just wait until Ortega and Volkanovski fight, and then he could come back at the end of the year. You know, if the injury is somewhat serious. But yeah, I like the Giga Chikadze fight. That's a great fight, great stylistic matchup, and Yair's been away for so long that he, you know, fighting Max Holloway when he returns, in some ways could be unjustified in many people's eyes. So you could put Giga in there. And he also has a great manager that seems to make things happen all the time. John, if you wanted to add something, let's see what you got.
Well, I got a question for you, and I guess Craig too. Here you're Yair Rodriguez, and we've seen a lot of guys have this situation happen before. This is the fight, right? This is the one that you want booked. That's not a title fight, right? Because it's the one that sets you up for the title fight. Do you wait? Do you wait to see if Max Holloway gets healthy? Because we had the same situation with Corey Sandhagen. I was about to pronounce his name wrong, Matt.
Sandhagen, you mean?
Say Corey Sandhagen. So we saw that with Sandhagen and Dillashaw. Like, do you move on or do you wait for the fight? So what do you think, JHK? Do you think he should wait? Because this is the fight, but there's a chance that something happens. There's a more attractive proposition for Holloway at some other point, and the UFC rebooks it. Do you wait or do you just move on if you're
at the top of the division? You have to become a businessman on top of being a fighter and in a slew of other things, right? So if you're a businessman, you wait because there's no other fight to take, right? It's too risky. You know what I mean? I'm right now, I'm knee deep in the show Billions. I'm obsessed with that show. Like, I've just flew through the seasons, and it's just so interesting how they like move things, pieces, and they're like deceptive and stuff like that. But in fighting, it's not like that. In fighting, it's like you fight or you don't fight. And if you fight, there's a risk. If you don't fight, there's a risk. But I think in this one, the risk of fighting somebody lower in the rankings is more disadvantageous for Yair. So I think he should wait for Max Holloway, because if he goes in there and loses to Max, he's like, oh, he lost to Max, the uncrowned champ of the featherweight division. I still hate people that say that. I don't. It's just terrible. Craig, what do you think of my thoughts?
It really is tricky, and without having seen Billions, I mean, hopefully it's a good show. Maybe I'll check it out sometime. I've been sitting here drinking too much Canadian sap water. Look at that. I'm not joking. Carbonated sap water, maple sap. It is really tricky, and I mean, if you're Max Holloway, is this the best matchup that gets you back up to the top? Like, obviously, he found it pretty quick to go, oh, it's a guy that's been off for 2 years. He carries a little bit of a star value, and this is the fight that's going to get me over all of the other contenders back up to a fight against either Ortega or Volkanovski. So for Holloway, it makes a lot of sense. If you're Yair Rodriguez, probably makes a lot of sense too, because of that fact, because there's so many people out there on social media. They're in the underground whisper networks of Reddit. They're saying, hey, Max Holloway, he really is the champion. So if you're Yair Rodriguez, you have to get that win over too. What does a win over a Giga Chikadze mean? Again, to Craig Allen, it means a lot, but I don't sign the checks. So it really is tricky that way. But for both guys, it seems like the perfect fight. And I mean, there's one guy kind of creeping in the background, and it's Zabit Magomedsharipov, but he can't fight anybody right now. So, you know, it complicates things even more.
Isn't he retired?
Is he retired? Is he injured?
I know he's injured. I know he had surgery, but is he retired though? That's the question. Like, there's nothing there. Like, you see a lot of these Russian fighters, they're kind of a mystery, you know what I mean? When they do go back to Russia, it's like they go back to it's like the Chinese fighters too, you know, when they go back to China, we just don't hear from them. We don't know anything that's going on, right? Really. And what snippets we get is like fans dissecting Instagram stories, right? Like, that has become like the new news like reel is the Instagram stories, man. It's pretty insane. But yeah, man, Yair, I think he should fight, man. But as business move wise, I think he should wait. But there's a lot of good matchups. Like, even like someone was mentioning in the chat, Edson Barbosa stepping in and fighting Yair. That's a great fight right there. A great matchup, more advantageous for Edson Barboza, right? Because he's still climbing up, and Yair's supposedly at the top, right? So I don't know, man. Josh Emmett, I don't think that's gonna happen. Josh Emmett, he's somewhat still recovering from his injuries, and right now he's in Alaska. So I'm trying to get an interview with him. So that's why I know that. But yeah, he's in Alaska fishing and enjoying life, right? So keep it real. What we got Drake here. Drake's like, if Canada was a person, it would be Craig. Is that a compliment?
It's called. It says right on it, tapped in Canada sapsucker, the lemon one, organic sparkling tree water, #1 ingredient, organic maple water. It's good stuff. It really exists.
Definitely. Now, another
tapped in Canada.
Tapped in Canada, right? I don't. That sounds like a terrible porn name or something.
It does.
Right?
It sounds like an adult film.
Yeah, definitely. Now, another a matchup that played out on the pay-per-view last weekend was Lauren Murphy and Joanne Calderwood, right? A fight that some people. Did you guys think Joanne won that fight? Some people thought she won the fight. There's some topics there that we could discuss. Who won the fight? And then the second round. Was that a 10-8 round? Some people were screaming like that was a 10-8 round. In my opinion, I didn't think it was a 10-8 round. I didn't think that there was a near finish. Yes, she was beating her up from the top. She controlled the fight, the positions and all of that. But I want to see near finishes to get a 10-8 round. John, you're probably better at judging fights than me. What did you think of that second round?
I am definitely not better at judging fights than you, but I will say, no, I'm with you. It takes a lot to get a 10-8 out of old John Franklin. And the reason why is because it takes a lot more to get 10-7s. I think that if they were, if these were a lot more prevalent and you could say, wow, this person really put it on the other person. Craig and I have talked about judging and scoring so much that it's at this point, it's kind of getting old. But I think that there has to be a way that a 10-8, in boxing, I grew up as a boxing fan, and I sort of went to MMA as MMA evolved. And, when you have 10, 12 rounds, you see things like guys taking rounds off to then take the next 2 rounds. So the scoring, you can get legit 10-8, you can get 10, you can get all kinds of cards because you can make it up over the next couple of rounds. In MMA, you got 3 or 5 rounds. I think that sometimes judges are almost scared to give 10-8s because you put the person at such a disadvantage. They're almost scared to penalize fighters for like blatant soccer penalty kick shots to the dick because it's just like, hey, if I take a point, it changes the entire outcome of this fight because of this one thing. So, yeah, I had the fight for Murphy, but I could see why people would have it close. I just thought that it was Murphy's fight.
Craig, was it Murphy's
I had to go
fight?
back through my tweets, which is always fun because then you got to type in your handle and you got to type in what you're probably typed out. So I had 29-28 Murphy. I had Murphy Calderwood fight of the night. And then the tweet before that was 20-18 Murphy. And while she controlled the second, it's a 10-9 in my book. Judges could be feeling liberal with the 10-8s though. So who knows? That's the trouble. What constitutes a 10-8? What constitutes a 10-7 and below with a 10-point must system? And I agree with John. You look at MMA versus boxing and what a 10-8 is. I mean, geez, it could be a close competitive round. I could slip a couple times. Is it really a knockdown? And then it really plays into the scoring of it. Or like when Ilir Latifi fought Tanner Boser and Ilir Latifi's on top of him, but Boser has a more effective striking. Sometimes it's really hard to score some of these fights. And it's not just hard for you and me and everybody out there that's watching every single fight. When it's hard for like the Sean Sheehan's of the world, then there's probably going to be an issue with the scoring. But even this fight, again, I could see an argument either way. But the Panty Kianzad Alexis Davis fight, I thought Alexis Davis won that fight 29-28. And when I hear 30-27, 30, like what are we even watching the same thing? Like what are we doing?
Yeah, that Alexis Davis Panty Kianzad fight, I thought that fight was a lot closer than the Calderwood Murphy fight. Both fights were close, but I thought that fight was really close. 30-27, that was a stretch, man. Like some of these judges, man, we could talk about this further. I just wanted to tap into it. The reason why is because Lauren Murphy, she's won like 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 in a row now, and she still hasn't gotten a title shot. And Dana White, he doesn't seem to commit to Lauren Murphy, man. Or lucky Lauren Murphy. She's not so lucky, John. John, how lucky does she have to be to get the next shot? I think like there's no choice, man. She's Valentina needs to fight. Valentina, if you send the contract, I just see her just like not even looking at the name. She just signed it and said, "Hey, let's go fight," because that's the type of person she is. So why is the UFC so reluctant on Laura Murphy, John?
You know, here comes Chael again. Chael says that, you know, when you don't pay attention to how much necessarily a fighter gets paid or what they're ranked, pay attention to placement on the card. And if you're ever going to bury somebody, I mean, look at where she was placed on this card. I mean, people could care less. And Craig and I have also talked in the past about, you know, how sometimes really good fights are put in weird places on cards. And you're like, why is this fight on the prelims, or why is this fight here or there? I don't know, man. Listen, I have interviewed Lauren Murphy. She used to train out of Phoenix. I like Lauren Murphy. I think that she would represent the sport well. I think she would give Shevchenko, I mean, as much as anybody gives Shevchenko a good fight, she'd give her as good of a fight as anybody else would. I just don't think she's marketable enough. And you could take that and ascribe whatever you want to it about why I'm saying that I don't think she's marketable. But she's not somebody that you look at her or you listen to her and say, wow, I really want to hear this person, or I really want to see this person more. She just doesn't have the it factor. And listen, Betch Correia got fights, so it's not like the it factor is something you need to get title fights. But I don't know, man. There's just something about her that doesn't raise the kind of eyebrows that some of the other fighters do. But I think she deserves it. And, you know, Craig, if you're interested in the early stoppage archives, check out when Craig was questioned about the Carlos Barza title shot on our show. He was not as for it as he is now. So who knows with Craig Allen and title shots. And with that, I send it over to Craig Allen.
Well, I mean, listen, like we talk about Lauren Murphy, and she's a fighter that, let's go way back. So Matt Allen, Craig Allen, we get back into MMA big time, 2016, 2017. Lauren Murphy was not having good times in 2016, 2017. Like, she was having a poor run at bantamweight. Like, she was still kind of talking a bit of smack, but not really delivering. And then all of a sudden she goes on a run like this. Like, she was our 2020 Fight Night Picks Female Fighter of the Year. Now, does that hold a lot of water in comparison to some of the other award shows? Maybe not. But in the grand scheme of things, she had a great 2020. She had that big win over Shakarova where she submits her. That's huge, because Shakarova was a good grappler in her own right. And then you beat Joanne Calderwood. I would think she should get a title shot. Speaks well on the mic to the point where she's so confident that she might let a few curse words in there, but that's always fun. Seems genuine enough. And then when you really want to boil it down, you look at the rest of the flyweight landscape. You go, well, Jessica I already got a shot. So is Lauren Murphy worse for us than Jessica I? Probably not. So I go with Lauren Murphy. But you're right. Like, we've seen Chukagian try it. We've seen Liz Carmouche try it. We've seen We've seen Jessica Andrade, who was supposed to be the best, offering that they had. So is Lauren Murphy better than any of those fighters? Maybe on her best day, but it is a really tough fight to try and sell. And it's another one where you're probably going to get a big headliner, maybe something in the middle, and then Shevchenko fights Murphy, if it does even happen.
The thing about Murphy is that, she switched up her management, you know what I mean? And then, she thought that was going to help her. It doesn't seem like it's helping her too much. Of course, she did, heading into the fight, it seemed like the UFC was lining up Joanne Calderwood. If she won this fight, that it was like a done deal that she's going to fight Shevchenko. And I thought that was a good matchup, right? And Lauren Murphy's even a better matchup because she went in there and beat Joanne Calderwood. And then she gets on the mic, you know what I mean? Like, getting on the mic on a pay-per-view, she should have said something, man. She needed to cut the promo. I think that's what they wanted. You cut the promo, right? Like, where was the promo? There was no promo. It was just like she kind of went through the paces and then she left the interview. It's like, Craig, was that a missed opportunity? Like, once it's like on that platform, you got it. Joe Rogan is there. He's gonna ask you, like, what do you want to say? He's not gonna get deep into the performance, right? He's gonna ask you to call somebody out.
Yeah, but again, I'll give John some credit here, because I thought about this card. There were so many fights, right? When you have a 14-fight card, it's kind of easy not to to forget some fights, but just placement on the card. And then when I look at it, okay, so let's say Lauren Murphy cuts an insane promo. She deserves this title shot. Well, then Eric Anders fights Darren Stewart, and everybody forgets about what happened. And then Brad Riddell fights Drew Dober, and listen, in a better for worse situation, for worse, Eric Anders fights Darren Stewart to a fight that most people are going to forget the next day. And then Brad Riddell and Drew Dober have an all-time classic. I mean, that could be a fight of the year candidate. So it just piles on even more. So for Lauren Murphy, Joanne Calderwood, they could have done the best, or they could have done something to the best of their abilities as far as a call-out had either one of those fighters won. Being Lauren Murphy, yeah, she probably should have said something. And I mean, John, another one, both Johns, we look at it and, I mean, geez, who knows who Uroš Medic is these days? Do most fans know who he is? Because I bet you money, if I went up to Joe Rogan today, face-to-face, I said, Joe, do you know who Uroš Medic is? He probably knows exactly who he is because the kid won his fight, and I say kid like I'm Dana White. He goes out back, he cuts a great promo, has a great interview with Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's super excited about him. So if Uroš Medic can do it, then I would think anybody could do it. But it just seems like there are certain people that just don't, and they miss the opportunity.
Yeah, you got to be calculated in that platform, in that situation. You got to go out there, and of course you have to win. But once you get the mic, man, you gotta look at Juliana Pena. She didn't even cut a promo. She was doing an interview and she cut it the promo, right? And then pretty much she's getting a title shot off of that, right? Like you got, if you're doing it at the show where the crowd is there and then they could get you and they could cheer for you, you know what I mean? Like you got to take advantage of it. But at the end of the day, you know, put that aside. Lauren Murphy does deserve a title shot, man. And if they don't give it to her, it's like you might as well leave. You know what I mean? You might as well just be like, you know, Corey Anderson did it. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of fighters that did it. They're like, I'm tired of this shit. Like, they're not treating me like I should be treated. Maybe I should just go somewhere where I'm going to get treated better. John, yes.
I'm with Craig and you. I think that, you know, listen, everybody says that the best trait that you can have is authenticity, right? So if it's not authentic for Lauren Murphy to cut a promo, then maybe she shouldn't. But with that being said, I will say this. The example you used was a good one, which is Juliana Pena. Now, Juliana Pena does color commentary for Combate. So comparing the two of them, obviously Juliana Pena is much more, you know, able to cut a promo than Lauren Murphy is. But I think as fans, we are sort of forgiving of the person who steps a little bit out of their comfort zone to advocate for themselves. And I think that's what she'd be doing. Just go out there and say, listen, Valentina, you're a wrecking ball, but you know, it's not, you know, whatever. You're the big bad wolf, but I'm the little pig with the brick house. Whatever you want to say, you can say it in that moment and people are going to forgive you, even if it's a little cringy. And I think that maybe she's afraid to open a can of worms. And next thing you know, she's Colby Covington or Henry Cejudo. And like, or for a better example would be Jessica Ai. Like Jessica Ai says all these things and it's like all cringeworthy. I think maybe she's worried that she's going to go too far that way and lose everybody. But I think that fans will forgive you advocating, right? What would have been a nice move for Lauren Murphy was maybe to do like, give GSP some props and like get on her knees and do that bit where she's like, Dana White, please. Something like that where it's heartfelt, but you're still making a memorable promo cut, but you're not like turning a heel or something. You're doing something that's memorable, but not necessarily out of your, you know, personality of who you are.
You remember when Chael beat Bisping? I believe that was the fight where after the fight, you know, he barely won the fight. Some people thought Bisping won the fight too, right? But it didn't matter because Chael just made us forget about the fight immediately after, and he came out and said, Anderson Silva, you absolutely suck.
Yep.
That's not really offensive, man. You could do that. You know what I mean? Like if she did that, something similar to that, everybody would be like, just like, what? Who is this woman, right? Like she's calling out the assassin, Valentina Shevchenko. Like, and I would have been backing it.
Well, quickly, remember that time Daniel Cormier told John Jones to get his shit together?
Yeah.
That was a great promo. He just mopped the cage with some dude. I don't even remember the fight, but he's like, John Jones, get your shit together, boy. Like, that's the one sentence where it's like, okay, I said everything needed to be said. I said, John Jones, you're a mess, and you need to get it together so that I can beat you. I mean, that's fitting a promo. And
you get a response from John Jones, right? What, you don't think John Jones is going to respond to that? That's just part of it, man. And I love it, and I love the sport, you know, because of that. Like you do need to kind of step out of the comfort zone and do your thing, man. But sometimes it doesn't work, man. And I thought like even Leon Edwards could have done it after his fight too. He could have cut the promo, right? But he just didn't do it. And what can you do, man? You can't force fighters to to do promos or be prepared for those situations. But when they do go out there and come through, you love it, right? You love it. You're spitting to it, right? And then it just makes the fight a little bit more exciting because, you know, Valentina's not like a social media darling, right? But if she cut the promo and Valentina responded to that, like after the show, that would have been on every website, right? Every website would have been like Valentina responds to Lauren Murphy. Yes.
Here's the way you do it. You take something about Valentina Shevchenko and you completely flip it and like clown her with it. You say, Valentina, when you win, you like to dance. Well, how about dancing your ass to the cage to fight me? It's just that simple. And then you just move on.
Why
Craig
do you
doesn't
just
like
mess?
it. Craig hates when I cut promo. This guy.
Come
I thought
on,
I raised
Craig.
him better, JHK.
It's really tough to say
It's a
what
dad
to do.
joke.
It's a bad one though. I mean, like there's so many good fights. There's so many good fights you think that you could make, but at the same time, the division has to advance so much. So you got to go to the fact that you got to listen to the school of John Franklin in terms of promotion. It's a slippery slope right there.
I thought, John, that was a great option right there. Like, you should have messaged Lauren, you know, just randomly and said, hey, this is something you could go with after the fight. And maybe she would have called you out and be like, there's some guy messaging me with promos and I don't need that anymore.
Well, listen, JHK, Craig didn't pick my promo, but he picked that shirt. So who knows what this guy's picking, right? I mean, we can't trust his judgment.
They're little Sasquatches. Like that Sasquatch is riding a horse. And what else? That Sasquatch is in a hot air balloon of smaller balloons.
I'm just picturing Craig after the show. He's hopping on a private jet going down to the Bahamas or something. I don't know. That's what the shirt looks like to me.
I'm going camping tomorrow, and this is the shirt that I'll end up wearing at some point on the trip.
He's getting real liberal with that button choice. He's getting He's got a plunging neckline.
I hope you see Sasquatch out there, man. I hope that you run into that guy.
Fingers
crossed. Get his picks for next week. You know what I mean? Like
Sasquatch
maybe you could get him on the show. Yeah. Now another thing that came out of man, there's so much that came out of last week's event, right? Like, what about this Jahamal Hill, Bobby Green beef going on? Have you guys been following this? No, you haven't been following this? All right, let me play this for you guys, right? Because if you go on Jahamal Hill's Instagram, he has a video of Bobby Green like on his Instagram, and then Jahamal Hill responds to it. So I'm gonna get this on our screen here. Let me do this real fast. See, you guys know that I'm not like good at this, so usually we have a let me see.
I can fill the time with words.
All right, fill it in, man. Fill it in.
John Franklin. I mean, if you were going to give anybody a little bit of a cut in terms of promotion and promotability, I'm sure there's people out there watching now, or people in the comment section. You definitely have to give Emiliano Sordi like some type of guidance in terms of what his hairstyle is, because I've seen this guy fight time and time again, and it's like if you had my hair but put no product in and just let it go back. That's what Emiliano Sordi's going with. And I know he seems to be a great guy. He does great work in South America, but Emiliano Sordi with the hair.
If there's ever been a podcast where you can't come with weak hair, it's Early Stoppage. You got to come with something on top of your head or don't come at all. So Emmanuel Sordi, sorry, buddy. Craig's right on this one. You got to at least – you're on the big time now, man. There's cameras pointed at you. So let's get it together.
Put your best Sasquatch shirt on and go.
That's really all you have to do.
Yo, StreamYard changed everything, man. I didn't even know that. I should have been better prepared. They changed the whole sharing the screen thing. I don't even know what's going on, man. I gotta go fix this. But anyways, I don't want to deal with it right now. But let me give you a little bit of a backstory, right? Bobby Green, I guess he was at the events, right? And you know what happened to Jahamal Hill, right? His elbow got dislocated. I guess Bobby Green was with somebody else and they were laughing or something. And then Jahamal Hill's brother went up to Bobby Green and they kind of get into this verbal back and forth. And then, you know, of course, Jahamal Hill finds out and then he's calling him a bunch of names. And now they're going back and forth, right? So what's interesting to me about this is, man, it's like, I think they could have kept it like behind the scenes a little bit, but they put it out there. The reason why I think they could have kept it behind the scenes is because they can't fight each other. What are they going to do? They're going to fight each other on the street? Like that's the thing about this beef right here that I wish I could play the thing for you guys, but anyways, it doesn't matter.
JSK, I don't know if you're aware, but these fighters are prone to violence, both inside and outside the cage. Those guys fighting on the street is not that unlikely.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're really going back and forth like some World Star hip hop style like beef. You know what I mean? Like they're making videos, they're doing like Instagram lives. You know what I mean? And it's interesting, but at the same time, if they can't fight each other like inside the cage, I feel like they should handle it some other way. You know what I mean? Going back and forth on social media, it's like I don't know, man. I don't think there's any point to that. You know, they could sit down and talk to each other about it. There's a good point right here. UFC open weight division, Hill versus Green. I don't like that fight for Bobby Green at all. You know what I mean? Bobby Green, Jamal Hill's a big dude, right?
We've seen stranger things, right? Like Dana White, we're never going to book catchweight fights. And last year, there were plenty of catchweight fights last time I checked. So, hey, make it a catchweight fight.
Yeah, we could make it a catchweight fight. So like going back to like the PFL, man, what have you guys thought, Craig? I know you're watching it right now. I'm watching it on the screen over here, like little bits and pieces of it as it goes along. But this season has been incredible, man. Like this season has had some crazy fights, some just amazing upsets. What about Corey Hendricks today, dude? Like this dude, where did he come from? ACA?
Yeah, I mean, huge win for him, and then they've got him like sitting in the back. And the cool thing about that is like having Hendricks on TV. Who would have thought that Corey Hendricks would be like a guy kind of keeping people away from their destinies, like Corey Hendricks? But that's a good opportunity to even build Corey Hendricks' name. So then the next time he fights, fans are going to know who he is. So I do like what the PFL's done. John and I have been really, really kind of critical about them or with them on our shows before, because I'm looking at it right now. They have ground strikes, arm strikes, leg strikes, total strikes. They show strike speed. They throw like too many things on the screen. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, like it's way too much. We're watching this through a ref cam right now. How silly is that? Like you don't see that in other places, but they're trying new things. And listen, sometimes when you throw enough at the wall, something sticks. So I do like it, and they have had some really entertaining fights. The one problem that I know Matt Allen always had with the PFL is that A, it's a lot of dominance fighters, and B, there's a lot of wrestlers. And I think they're slowly getting away from some of the wrestlers, or at least bringing in more entertaining or less one-dimensional wrestlers. But I definitely enjoy it this year. I know there is a lot of former UFC names, so that's what's helped kind of the buzz, and there's so many celebrity investors. And I don't know about you, but every day or every other day, I have a look in my inbox and there's an email out there. Like John Franklin and I, we talked 20 minutes about how it was now sponsored by carparts.com. Like, I don't care. But credit to them. It seems like every other day they've got news. And I will say something. I've got some here somewhere. I guess it doesn't matter. I got some of these in front of me. I got some Topps baseball cards in front of me, right? Topps is cool. I've got some Upper Deck here somewhere. That's the point I'm trying to make. They just announced that they're going to have, a partnership with Upper Deck, and they're going to have PFL collectibles. I don't know who in the world is going to pick up PFL cards. I mean, me and what, like James Lynch and a few other people? But like, I'm all for it. I think it's really cool. So you know what? As much as I like to rag on them, I actually have kind of gotten roped in a little bit more this year, and I do like what they're doing.
Yeah, the whole like statistics thing, it is cool, but for like a regular fan, it's really overwhelming. It's almost like looking at baseball statistics, right? When you look up someone's like, let's say you're looking up Nolan Ryan, you know what I mean? If you watch baseball in the
past, look
him
up on the back of the baseball
exactly card. If you look at the back of the baseball card, and maybe that's why they're doing the statistics. So when they do make the Upper Deck cards, you can look on the back and say, oh, this guy's strike speed is at like a 3,000 miles per hour. I don't know, man. Come on, like, but it's kind of cool at the same time. Like they're trying to do something different, but I don't know. I don't really pay attention too much. Like significant strikes too. Like in the UFC, like what is a significant strike? Like, you know, like you watch certain fights, you think this guy threw like 50 significant strikes, and then you look at the statistic and he threw 20. Like, I don't understand it. But these guys, they're doing something different. John, overall thoughts on this season? What do you got?
So anybody that's listening who has never been a guest on a podcast before, I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek behind the scenes, a little bit of a trick. If there's a subject that's brought up that you either don't know about or don't care about, what you do is you redirect it and you ask the host a question, which is what I'm about to do. One thing that Craig and I have talked about, and listen, it's not fair for me to say I don't care about the PFL because I used to cover the World Series of Fighting, and those guys were incredibly good to me. I had a lot more time to cover fights back then, but and I like the World Series of Fighting, and I'm sure if I paid PFL more attention, I would like it as well. But here's the question I have for you, JHK, which is something that Craig and I have talked about. Is the PFL is like an independent film versus a major motion picture, right? So you don't have the stars, but the question becomes, is the script good enough for you to care about it? So my question to you is all the bells and whistles, and let me just say, the bells and whistles are amazing. I'm a little bit hit or miss with stats because I think fights and fighters are different than like baseball or the NBA where everybody plays 48 minutes or 60 minutes or 9 innings and you go through the same filter so stats mean more. Do you think that they have enough bells and whistles to overcome the lack of talent? Or I won't even say lack of talent, the lack of big names, guys in their prime. You know, it's because they're number 3 no matter what they put in their press releases. If a guy leaves the UFC, the first thought's Bellator, the second thought's PFL. Right? That's just the way it is. So do you think that what they've cooked up is enough to overcome a lack of big name stars?
I'm on the screen. It wasn't my answer.
Oh, it wasn't. I thought you had something to say before I
Oh,
chimed
he's
in.
No, they're just number 2. I get what John's saying. I'm sorry for talking over you, but they send those emails out and they're like, "Oh, we're number 2. We're number 2. Cool. That's what you're aiming for."
When you look at it, the bells and whistles are only like from my point of view, the bells and whistles are cool and everything, but they're only there when you want to like contest a result of a fight. That's like a lot of the times, or you know, like something happens, like let's there's a split decision or a unanimous decision, then you go back and say like, look at this guy, he landed like 101 strikes and the other guy landed 100 strikes, so the guy that landed 101 strikes won the fight. Like for real, it's not enough, right? But it's a startup, man. Really, at the end of the day, it's a startup. When you look at it, they're bringing in guys. They have all these investors coming in with big names, and are they number 2? That's a stretch, right? There's like this number 2 like level. I think there's a number 2 level, right? There's like number 1 level, which is the UFC, right? There's undeniable, and there's a number 2 level, right? Where there's like Bellators and the one championships, and even you might even put in the KSW in there, maybe, or the ACAs, and maybe the PFLs there too, like at the lower level of that, right? Because they do have that star power, like the Anthony Pettis's and the Rory McDonald's and all of that good stuff. So going back to the question, it's not enough. It's not enough, right? They do still need to, like, I think like in 3 more seasons, we need 3 more seasons, and then we'll maybe be able to say, okay, they might be developing into a solid number 2. But right now, they're level 2. And I don't think everybody's fighting for number 2. Yeah.
I got one more thing to throw at you. Something I've been talking to Craig about forever. Craig knows what's coming. Should the PFL be a feeder league for the UFC? And is that the thing that will ultimately keep them around, make them relevant in this respect? One, they're like the minor leagues, so guys can get sent down from the UFC to the PFL by the UFC. Secondly, is it worth it to make either one? You can't do it with all the guys that win in all divisions, but one guy, and I don't know how you'd figure this out, maybe fan vote, one guy that wins the million also gets a contract with the UFC.
Well,
do you think a connection with the UFC would help because they're both on ESPN? So if I'm ESPN, I want that because now I'm making the PFL more relevant by giving it a direct connection with the UFC. Because the fact they're on ESPN, if you see MMA fighting and you're at a bar and it's on ESPN, you're probably assuming it's the UFC anyway, other than the fact that it's in an octagon. I mean, the UFC does have some distinctions. What do you think about that as a way to make the PFL relevant?
Well, in the UFC's eyes, they don't want to partner with anybody. In the ESPN's eyes, yes, it's a good idea. You know what I mean? They win. It's a win-win. PFL, it's a win-win for them too, man, because they have that, you know, that the number one connected to them. But for fighters, it's not a win-win, because if you win $1 million and you get signed by the UFC, they're not gonna pay you $1 million to fight, right? Like, is what's his name? Felipe Lids. Is he getting paid $1 million a fight? No, he's not, right? It's just he's in the UFC right now. I don't know. I think he should go back to the PFL, man. I think like the PFL is a sweet situation for a lot of these fighters that compete in the league, man. Like I don't see I don't know. It's just hard to like imagine the UFC connecting with any other promotion other than like a LFA or like a Alaska Fighting Championships or one of those leagues. Like, yes, the UFC will work with them because it benefits those smaller guys that are on UFC Fight Pass.
Like, listen, I can think of a couple, and I don't mean to be like that, but how many good fighters have we seen from Alaska FC recently?
Jake Hune, man, what's up?
Jake Hune, like Jared Cannonier's from Alaska, Gina Mazzani's from Alaska, but like so is Victor Rodriguez, and I think he's the worst fighter we've ever seen in the UFC ever.
I don't remember Victor.
He just fought exactly.
Oh, he did.
He fought Adrian Yanez, and then he came out and fought Bruno Silva, and then it was bye Victor Rodriguez.
Okay,
see,
okay, I see what
Alaska,
you're saying.
Alaska FC, and I'm sorry to the good people of Alaska. I'm sure they drink. They probably drink sap juice too, like I do.
Hey, at the end of the day, Alaska's basically Canada. You know what I mean? Alaska's basically Canada, man. I think they should just give Alaska to Canada, man. Like, come on, just give it to them. Just give them that area. But yeah, the UFC, they have JD Smith, Digi Artist. They have Tough. They have the Contender Series. They have all those promotions on Fight Pass that are feeder leagues, right? And then those feeder leagues are comfortable with that. PFL, I don't think they'll be comfortable with it. But it's like it's all in the pay too, man. If the guy wins $1 million and then they go get signed by the UFC, it doesn't work out for them, man. I think that they would rather go through another season and then try to win another $1 million. Man, that $1 million is very attractive. Even Bellator is doing it with their tournaments too, man. It's like, if I was a fighter and I thought, man, I'm not going to be able to be a UFC champion, realistically, I would go to the PFL. I would go to, Bellator, and try to go get in one of those tournaments and go for that, right? But what can you do, man? Craig, would you do that? Like, do you think fighters are being more realistic on their capabilities, and that's why they've chosen to go with certain promotions rather than others?
It's really weird. Like, I mean, you talk about it with Felipe Lins. So the guy wins $1 million, but is the UFC the dream? Like, I know he missed the second season or the end of the second season due to injury. He had some fights booked, and then he ends up in the UFC. I would think, like you said, if I'm Felipe Lins, I stick over with the PFL. I have a better shot at making more money. So it definitely lies in, what motivates certain fighters. Is it money? Is it stability? Is it the popularity? And for a lot of people, like you've seen it on the regional scene, a guy, gal, they get a big win on a fight card that most people are never going to see. It's not televised. And I'm making it to the UFC. This is my dream. I'm going to the UFC. It's just like I'm going to wherever, NFL, NBA. It's such a big brand. They're not winning their first amateur fight and going, 1 championship, sign me up. Put me on The Apprentice, Chatri, please. So it really is tricky, at the end of the day that way. But to me, if it was me, you only get to do it once. So maybe you go, again, Victor Rodriguez shouts, the guy made the UFC. I'm never going to make it. But you do that. And then again, we've seen this too. That sells. That really does sell. Like, who was it? For the Terrence McKinney fight that he had last weekend against Matt Frivola. I went back and watched a bunch of Terrence McKinney fights. And his fight off of Contender Series. So he lost to Sean Woodson, and then he goes on the regional scene. Look up the poster. It's former Dana White's Contender Series fighters, Derek Minner and Terrence McKinney. Doesn't matter if they won or not. They fought on Dana White's Contender Series, and people are never going to forget that. So listen, credit where it's due, and you get to make money off of that. So maybe do, as cliche as it is, you shoot for the moon. If you miss, you land among the stars. But if it was me, I'd aim for it. And if the money happens, it happens. Yeah. John, what do we need to do, man? What do you see this trend? Do you see the trend of like fighters? Because I just recently did an interview with one championship flyweight champion,
Adriano Moraes, and it might be coming out soon on some channel. I don't know what channel it is, but it's coming out soon. Very interesting chat, and he seems very content in staying with one championship, and I think he could go to the UFC and make good money and even fight for the title and even become a champion. I think that's how talented he is, but he just seems like, no, man, I don't need the UFC. I'm over there at one championship. Are guys realizing like, hey, I don't need to be in the UFC? Or is the UFC, like Dub C says over here at 209, he must be a Nate Diaz fan, that fighters want the notoriety of being a UFC fighter? They could walk around with the Venom shirt on, with the UFC on it, and people are like, are you a UFC fighter? You're like, yeah, I am. Do you think that still plays a factor?
I think it does. I mean, your Twitter bio, all these things, that because listen, let's look at some of the guys who would be cashing big checks right now had they not left. Justin Gaethje would probably have $2 or $3 million worth of, winning 55-pound tournaments in the PFL. Marlon Moraes, same thing. These guys chose to go to the UFC. Neither one of them won a belt. Gaethje, just because by the nature of the way he fights, has probably made a lot of money because of performance bonuses and all that kind of stuff. But, I don't know. Do you think he's made $1 million by now? You think he's made as much as he would have made had he stayed in the PFL? But he's looked at as this guy who is someday probably going to be in the UFC Hall of Fame based on how he fights. So I don't know. I mean, the reason why he stayed as long as he did in World Series of Fighting, he would openly tell you, is because he said, I'm not going to make there what I make here. And that's why he stuck around as long as he did. He was like the guy playing the violin on the Titanic with the World Series of Fighting. Him and Moraes both. Lance Palmer stayed. So I guess that's the question. Lance Palmer versus Marlon Moraes. Who made a better decision, to stay or to go? And once you figure that out, then you'll know, I think that Moraes is probably happy with his decision. He's got a title fight. He could have won it. He didn't. But same thing. I don't really know what the best answer is. It's probably unique for each guy. But that's the conundrum. Do I go and make all this money over here? Or do I want the notoriety of being a UFC fighter? Because anytime you say you're a fighter, the first thing someone's going to ask you is UFC. And then you have to explain to them, what are you going to tell them? No, but I could win $1 million in this tournament, but I don't fight in the UFC. So, yeah, it's a weird explanation to have to make.
Yeah, it is. Craig, do you JD Smith? Do you walk around with the UFC shirt on? And if people ask you, you're like, yeah, I'm a featherweight in the UFC. You want to test me? What?
No, I just walk around with a shirt with Sasquatches on it and say, hey, is this button a little bit too low? Am I showing too much? I don't know. It is a really tricky one. I mean, again, the fight that I'm watching right now, Dan Spawn and Emiliano Sordi. Could Emiliano Sordi be in the UFC? He probably could. Would he have a lot of success? I doubt it, but I mean, I think he could definitely crack the roster. But when there's money involved like that, like there's a few other fighters too. We've seen it where they're in the UFC, it goes all right, or it doesn't go well. They end up outside of the UFC, they start winning a bunch, and then it's, we got to get them right back into the UFC. Like, I bet you there's people out there in Sunderland or maybe in Poland, and they're like, hey, Phil DeFries, Stipe Miocic too. I bet that would be totally different. Wouldn't we like to see it? Phil's probably content with being with KSW. The money's great there. So I'll never fault somebody for going that way. You definitely have to set yourself up financially. And it's not often that you end up like, and this is a poor example because, again, PFL is a little weird, but we talked about it before the show. You're Sean O'Connell and you get a TV spot like that. Like, things like that don't happen very often. So you got to be able to kind of cash those checks when you can.
Definitely. You got to cash your checks. That's right, man. You got to make money. At the end of the day, you want to be able to quit fighting and still have something left over, right? You want to have a home. You want to have a home paid off, right? You want to have a little bit of money in the bank, maybe a business or something flowing, and maybe something, on the side. I don't know. But fighters are getting smarter, man, nowadays. They are getting into like the cryptocurrencies and doing businesses and investing their money. And it's great to see. The reason why I know, because I talked to all the fighters and I asked them about that, right? And they surprised me, some of them. And some of them surprised me of what they're not doing, right? But they do have a lot of support, and it's great to see. John, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're never going to be a champion in the UFC, $1 million is a hell of a consolation prize. So I just wonder at what point is going to be the cutoff, right? What's going to be the line? Because if you're a top 15 fighter, you're not quite cracking the top 10. It's a no-brainer. Let me go to PFL and try and, win this $1 million. But how long before it starts to inch up a little bit? And the number 7 fighter, the number 6 fighter who's only 30, the number 5 fighter, does Anthony Pettis potentially winning $1 million change something for guys that are in the UFC now? That's the question. I mean, he's not in his prime, but he's still relevant somewhat. So I think that's when certain guys leave that could have stayed. I thought that Rory McDonald honestly was going to have a bigger impact than he's had. Like if Rory McDonald would have came over, started cashing these $1 million checks and crushing everybody, then I thought that maybe the guys would be like, oh wow, this guy turned down his top 5 spot in the UFC and he's turned it into this other thing in the PFL. I think until we start seeing that, guys won't jump and there won't be a huge talent migration to the PFL.
Yeah, Roy McDonald, he failed, remember, at his first chance at $1 million. Douglas Lima, he ran into that animal. And now he's getting his second chance. I think he has a real good chance of earning this $1 million this year. But who knows, man? We got to see how it plays out. That man, Ray Cooper III, man, he's an animal, man. I think Ray Cooper III could go to the UFC and do really well. Craig, you're
an
a big
underdog.
Yeah, you're a big Ray Cooper guy, right?
I really like Ray Cooper now. I like Magomed Karimov a little bit more. Just like that. And that was a crazy win that he had tonight. Like, wow. That guy's got some skills. But, I mean, Ray Cooper's an underdog tonight. Is that the next fight?
I think so.
So, like that he's got a big fight coming up. But, John, I mean, you mentioned Rory McDonald, and you hope that he made a bigger impact. What more did you need to see out of his debut? Like, he made Curtis Millender look like Curtis Millender, a guy who has no takedown defense and isn't very good on the ground. And Rory looked great in that fight. Now he's got to fight against a guy that beat Habib Nurmagomedov. And I hope that's how the PFL markets that, because that's how you should. Say Gleison Tebow beat Habib and forget about the result. Just pull a Nate Diaz and make everybody believe the narrative. But yeah, I think Rory McDonald's going to mop the floor with Gleison Tebow tonight. So then that gives him 2 big wins. Again, if he finishes Tebow, he gets more points. He's going to end up moving quite far. And is it a safe Rory McDonald that we've seen? That's the thing, John. You're not going to see Rory McDonald go out there and have like the Robbie Lawler type fights where it's blood and guts. Those days are long gone. The guy's calf muscle doesn't even look the same anymore after the first Douglas Lima fight. He hasn't fought the same since the Lima fight, and he's had so many miles on him. So now he plays it safe. He plays the ground game. He strikes the clinch. I'm fine with it because, again, you got to understand what the guy's doing. $1 million is $1 million. As long as you win it. Doesn't matter how exciting the fight is. And I think that's why, Matt Allen and a lot of people have a hard time with PFL and World Series where there's so many wrestlers on the roster. But yeah, I just to encapsulate it all, I do like what they're doing this year. And I am excited about it.
Curtis Millender, wasn't he the one that had beef with Max Griffin when he got cut by the UFC, saying that Max Griffin didn't belong in the UFC, but now Curtis Millender has been proving himself wrong. You know what I mean? Like it's like, man, Max is probably at home watching this PFL season like, too bad.
Like,
so
I'm
sad,
thinking,
man.
like, Curtis Millender fights. He fought Thiago Alves. Then didn't he fight Sierra Bahadurzada? Like, he had some fights in the UFC, and I was excited about him as a prospect, but yeah, he hasn't had the best run outside the UFC.
No, he has not. Now, let's move on to the next topic, man. The next topic that I want to get into is the whole Korean Zombie, man. Korean Zombie this weekend versus Danny Gay. From someone that lives in Korea and listening to the narrative, from his camp and like snippets of interviews and everything about the Korean Zombie, especially coming off that Brian Ortega fight, he really didn't want to take a main event fight because he's just been taking. I think he has 7 straight. This is his 8th straight main event, right? And I don't think he even gets paid main event money, which is shitty as hell. And I think that's why he wanted to kind of step back and take a 3-round fight. But then the UFC came through and said, hey, they must have gave him a deal that he couldn't refuse, something to go with, the title shot and everything. Most likely if he wins this, he'll get a title eliminator in the next fight. But if he loses this fight, man, I think he retires. I think he's done. Like his body going through camps and being away from his family, traveling to the States and all of the stuff that he's been through, man, I think he's made enough money and he has a good gym, a successful gym. He has a partnership with Jay Park, K-pop star that got slapped by Brian Ortega. I think he's more famous for that than anything now. Yeah, the Korean Zombie, man, why do you guys see him winning this fight? You know, like Dan Ige has looked the best that he's looked in the last, like in his last fight, especially. But do you think the stylistic matchup of, you know, the Korean Zombie and his, you know, it doesn't seem like he's changed anything really. He's just a little bit more crisp, right? A little bit more technical, but he's still a brawler. Craig, what do you see?
We disagreed on the picks, so, you know, spoiler. But Matt had Ige, I took Korean Zombie, but I said, like, or, you know, right down the middle, it's a 50-50 fight. I gave every single thing in the book to say, hey, I'm not going to gamble on this fight. I'm not putting it on my card, popping popcorn, all that. But the tricky thing is, yeah, has he really changed his fight style ever? He moves forward. He gives one to take one. His strike differential is 0.14. I know that one to memory now. So walks guys down, gives one to take one. And his last time out, he fought a grappler and got outstruck by him. Now, Brian Ortega looked like a great striker in that fight, right? Like, you can't take anything away from him. But overall, I think working with Eddie Chow, working at Fight Ready, the John Franklin connection, the Arizona connection, I think it's a good move. I mean, we did see it, and I said it was going to be a forgettable fight, and everybody would forget it, but I didn't forget it. The Eric Anders fight with Darren Stewart last weekend. It was Eric Anders, his second camp at Fight Ready, and Eddie Chow was there, and you could hear Eddie clear as day giving Eric Anders pointers, giving him props when he needed it, and everything. Like, I basically had him like ISO cammed in my mind, and I was just listening to his corner instructions, and they were great. They were perfect. He did a lovely job. I think if you can even do half that kind of a job with the Korean Zombie, then you're going to be in a good spot. And if I do think we're going to get a throwback performance of his, because like you said, you can't be satisfied with what happened the last time out. It definitely wasn't very good. And we saw the last time he lost the fight, well, he looked really good after that. So for me, again, yeah, 8th main event in a row. Where did it start? UFC 140 against Jose Aldo. And then before, or was it that, or was it, now I'm really screwing it up. Because the fight before the main events was Mark Hominick in Toronto, and he finished him in like what?
7 seconds. Yeah.
Seconds. So I do think we're going to get a good performance out of him. I've got Zombie in this fight, but it should be a great one. I mean, Ige knocked out fellow Atlanta Canadian Gavin Tucker's last time out, and who saw that one coming?
Yeah, nobody saw that one coming, dude. Everybody was shocked by that. John Franklin, you know, are you on the Ige train? Because Ige is not a hard guy to finish, man. He's you know, he's that Hawaiian blood right there.
Okay, so for you hardcores, let's forget about George Roop and Leonard Garcia for a second. I have a theory that I've kept forever. Vitor Belfort was the person that originated this theory in my brain, which is some guys only lose to studs, right? So the question when you see them fighting, you know, even towards late in their career, are they fighting a stud? Okay, so now in recent memory, it's Jose Aldo, it's Yair Rodriguez, and it's Brian Ortega, who have defeated the Korean Zombie. Okay? Is Dan Ige on that level? I don't think he is, and I think that the Korean Zombie has not regressed enough, and the Dan Ige has not progressed enough for the Zombie to be done tonight. But I do think, in what you're saying, is if he has all these things lined up, the Zombie does, maybe this is a good fight to end on. Mm-hmm. But especially if you get the win. Especially if you get the win, this is when you walk away. But yeah, I don't think Ige's got it for him. And yeah, I think it's the Zombie's fight. I think he's a guy that only loses to studs. Again, let's forget about WEC for a second. And there you have it. Yeah, I'm taking the Zombie.
When you look at it, like, you know, you would love to see the Zombie walk away off a win, like a highlight win, KO, like he, you know, like that Morcano knockout. That was like a beautiful knockout, right? Even the Edgar performance. Like, imagine if he retired after the Edgar performance in Korea, main event. Like, that's a very beautiful send-off, right, for the Korean Zombie. But the Korean Zombie is not that type of fighter. He's never going to win and retire. He's going to end up just fighting until he cannot realize that, or he doesn't realize that, he realizes that he's not going to fight for the title again, right? That's what's going to happen to him. And if he goes out there and knocks out Dan Ige, let's say he knocks him out in the first round, because that could be a huge possibility right here, right? I say he steps in against Yair and fights him again, the rematch, turns it right around, and then that would earn him a title shot. Like, he wants the closest path to a title shot. I think that's the fastest path to that title shot. That would leapfrog him over Max Holloway and set him up perfectly at, like at the end of the year or the beginning of next year to fight for the title against Ortega and the winner of Ortega and what is it? Volkanovski. I believe the UFC wants to put him in that position, and that's a good thing for him. But all he needs to do is go in there and win. And the thing is, does he still have enough in the tank, or is this going to be the breakout performance by Dan Ige? Is he fighting the zombie at the right moment, right? Is he fighting a zombie at his most vulnerable, right? Where everything's like retirement is mixing up in his mind. You know what I mean? When retirement is mixing in your mind, that's not a good position to be in, right? But we'll see what happens, man. I'm going to go for every Korean fighter. He could be fighting Godzilla, and I'm going for Korean Zombie, right? Like, it doesn't matter, right? It's like Korean fighters are fighting. I'm cheering. I'm not really cheering for them, but if we're making picks, I'm picking them. Like this weekend, Sungwoo Choi is fighting, right? What's his name? Julian Erosa on the undercard. I'm gonna pick Sungwoo Choi, even though I think Julian Erosa is much more talented and a better fighter, and has more ways to win. I'm gonna pick Sungwoo Choi to win the fight, right? But in deep down inside, if I was betting money, I'm gonna pick Julian Erosa. Who did you pick, Craig, on that one?
Choi, big time.
Oh, you did?
I think he's way more technical. To me, I like him in that fight. To me, and we talked about it, and I won't go too far into it, but he lost those 2 fights to come in to Movsar Evloev and Gavin Tucker. And Firas Zahabi gave him huge props and said he was going to be a big star. And since those 2 fights, he's looked really good.
Okay. I see what you're saying. So if Julian Erosa doesn't wrestle him, like Choi because Choi was a national, he was on a national kickboxing team for Korea, so he's very technical on the feet. I've seen him fight live multiple times, like ringside. He has KO power. He just hasn't shown that in the UFC. I feel like he's just too tentative. And Erosa's a wild man, and if Erosa goes in there as a wild man and just overwhelms him, I think Choi will be able to, not Choi. I think Julian Rose will be able to go in there and win that fight. But yeah, Choi, if he stays technical, he's winning that fight for sure.
He's got to go to the school of Ray Cooper III. Holy smokes!
I know Ray's he's just an animal, man. He's just an animal. He's built from stone, and he's he's Hawaiian, man. Hawaiian blood, John. Hawaiian blood. You gotta put a little 10% extra, right?
But listen, my parents lived in Hawaii for a couple of years, and when we would go visit, I'd walk around. Hawaii is a little bit tougher a place than it gets credit for. It thinks like, yeah, I'm going to go there, take pictures and the sunshine and the rainbows and the beautiful girls. There were a couple of times we'd be driving by places. I'm like, oh, I don't want to go down that street. And I'm not somebody that has problems going down streets, but I would look down the street and go, maybe this one's not worth it. Maybe we'll go down the next one. So yeah, Hawaii is a bunch of guys that like to have fun and surf and enjoy the sunshine, and will fight you over, what time the next bus is coming. They have no problem getting fights.
Yeah, they're getting street fighter for real. Like, I went to school with Hawaiians and Samoans, and those guys are like that size. They're like Tai Tuivasa size in like freshman high school. Like imagine how big you were at freshman in high school, and think of Tai Tuivasa and how big he is. Like, guys are already that big at that age. You don't want to mess with those guys, man. I remember one time we were like going to lunch, like in high school, you could leave and drive and go to lunch or whatever. And we were with our Samoan friend, and he's already that big. He gets in, he opens the door, and then there's like this like sand mound on the side. He opens the door and puts the door on the sand mound. He gets in, he can't close the door, because the car sank down so much that the door got stuck in the sand. And then we can't laugh because he probably beat the shit out of us, all of us at the same time inside the car. So that's how big and dangerous these guys are, man. And they're straight up fighters. Any other fights that interest you, Craig, on this card coming up this weekend? Like something that we should look for. And before we go, you got to show us the shoes, man. The shoes.
Oh,
you got to show us the shoes, man.
The Fight Night Pick shoes. Shouts to Matt Russell in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. Yeah, no. I kind of got into shoes. Like I kind of pulled the Kevin Holland and got right into them. And anyway, it just so happened, like I was going around on Kijiji and I was looking for shoes, and all of a sudden I see this guy's doing design. So I hit him up, and yeah, he did an amazing job. He's actually a friend of my brother. So it's got the Canadian flag, Fight Night Picks. It's got the pop right there. It's got the popcorn right there, and then the logo in the back. No, he did an amazing job. So I'm assuming he would ship them out. I got a little freaky and did the Nike ID with the Blazers, but that's not as cool. Not as cool. But yeah, I mean, the plan is, add a little bit of flair to the wardrobe, because it can't just rock Sasquatch shirts for fun. But when I can go back to the States and as far as that's concerned too, our provincial government just opened everything up. So if you've got 2 shots and you're coming in from the States, you are good to go. So John,
come on.
I expect you to pull what is it? Howard Clarence, whatever. You get it. Exactly. And it's really exciting stuff. No, I am really excited. I haven't booked any of my trips yet for Maine, but I can't wait to get back to the States.
For sure, man. For sure. It's opening up, man. They said by the beginning of 2021, like there will be masks will be removed, and then you'll be able to travel. And if you're vaccinated, you don't have to do quarantines. And that's the thing, man. Those quarantines, those 2-week, 3-week quarantines, that's killing everything. So hopefully that does happen. And I do want to go out to Canada. That's like one of the first spots. It's like Canada and Brazil are the first spots that I'm thinking about. Like if I travel like more than 6-7 hours on a plane, because I hate flying, man. Flying just sucks. Like,
yeah, Canada's a great time. And to get back to your question, if I can,
yeah, for sure.
The fight that there's 2 fights. Well, there's a lot of them. How good's the new named Ricky Glenn gonna look? That's an interesting one. He's been off forever. It's not Rick anymore. It's Ricky. And he's got a big fight against Joaquim Silva that hasn't fought in forever, against Nazareth Hakprast. And then the real fight that I'm looking forward to most on this card is Nikolai Negumereanu and Alexa Kammer, because we know how good Kammer is as a striker. We also know how terrible his boxing is. We know how wild Negumereanu was as a heavyweight, and how good of what would you call him? Like a body weight specialist in terms of his throws and his grappling. Like he reminds me of, again, Aliaskhab Hizriev that was supposed to fight Kyle Dawkins. I went back and watched his tape. It was like, wow, these guys are special. Alexander Romanov with the crazy strikes, but the way that he picks guys up and throws them. Negumereanu's like this, but his regional scene talent and the guys he faced were not good. They were bad. They were really, really bad. And then he comes into the UFC and he loses to what? Probably the worst fighter in the UFC in Saperbek Safarov, if it wasn't Victor Rodriguez earlier. So Negumereanu really has to look a lot better. On the Instagrams, he had what? Hamzat Shemaev and Alexander Gustafsson in some of the pictures of the PI. So listen, I hope nothing but the best for him. I can't wait for that fight. And then a close second would be former M1 Global champ Bruno Silva, because I was really excited for his debut that would have been Duran Win a few years ago. But he was, well, USADA said it wasn't due to meat contamination, so he wasn't on the Canelo diet or the Alistair Overeem diet. So I'm eager to see just what Bruno Silva looks like this weekend.
And the slobber knocker of the night, I feel like, before it even happens, is Rocky Martinez and Josh Parisian. I think those guys are just going to be slobber knocking it. You know, I mean, it might not be the prettiest fight, but I think it's going to be a fight where you guys are like, how are these guys even standing, right? I think that's the type of fight we're going to see between those, because Rocky Martinez, he's kill or be killed in this fight, man. He's sitting on 3-fight losing streak. You know, pretty much if he loses this, like, it's done. It's over for him, right? And Josh Parisian, he might be in the same situation too, man. He lost his last fight. You never know with the UFC. You know, 2 in a row could be like that. Mr. Franklin, what do you got, man, for us for this weekend?
Listen, guys, I'm going to shoot you straight. Saturday's my birthday.
I'm
having a party at my house. We're swimming. We're having a good time. And Anderson Silva is boxing Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. is fighting Hector Camacho Jr. If you think that I'm not watching that, you haven't been paying attention to who I am. But listen, I'm a teacher, JHK, so I'm going to answer a question that was asked. because that's what, I would want my students to do. Matt Brown's opening the main card. He's fighting Diego Lima. I'll take it.
All right. Hey, that's interesting. Something interesting about that. You're a teacher, right? So do your students know what you do on the side? Or is it like, oh, exactly. I'm a teacher too.
I don't broadcast it. I tell them that I podcast if they have questions about podcasting, but I don't tell them what. They know I'm interested in fights and they know I podcast. They've never made the connection.
Okay. Because me, like,
they're 10-1, they're not that smart. I'm not that good of a teacher.
I'm a teacher too, right? I'm not technically a teacher. I'm an instructor, right? So I instruct kids on like test prep, and sometimes they ask me like, what do you do like on the side? And I tell them like, I cover fighting, and they're not even interested at all in like that. They're like, who cares about that, right? So I'm just like, all right, you don't need to know what I'm doing, right? So that's the situation with that. But anyways, 90 minutes, man, we done it. We accomplished the marathon. I loved that we got John Franklin on, man. John, we got to get you on again. You know what I mean? I like this trio right here. I like the vibe right here, right? Craig, John, and JHK. John 2.2, right? Anyways, you guys, thank you so much. Fight night picks. You guys go out there. You guys are what, 25K? Have you reached that yet?
Where
are you guys at right now?
Knock wood. The in-laws had coasters made once. I mean, listen, God love them.
All right, so you guys go and check out Fight Night's picks. If you don't know them by now, man, where have you been? Are you on Mars with what's his name, Elon Musk? Because come on, go check them out. All their shows, great breakdowns, great show. John, what's going on?
Quickly before we go, I've said this privately, I want to say it publicly. When I was podcasting 100 years ago, I joined MMA Today, reached out to JHK. He took a ridiculous amount of time with me to talk to me about MMA Today and all the inner workings of it. What ended up happening was MMA Today turned into a podcast network, turned into Cage Side Press Podcast Network, turned into me going to Loudmouth, turned into me meeting Craig. The rest is history. But the amount of time that JHK gave me just in asking him questions and all that stuff and DMing him for someone he didn't know from nobody was amazing. Props to you. You're a great guy. All the success you have is well-deserved.
Appreciate it, man. Hey, man, like the reason why I did that is because I don't give my time to people. I'm just going to be straightforward with you, man. Like I know like this group of people like in this industry, but like I knew the passion was there. That's why I was like, all right, let's talk to this guy because we sat there and talked about it, right? But MMA Today, talk about I just wanted, before we go, man, MMA Today was a website that is no longer exists. A lot of work I did over there. It's gone, like into into Mars. It was on that spaceship that left, you know what I mean? Like, but that, produced a lot of great guys, right? You're looking at some of them right now. Craig, did you work over there for a little bit? You did, right? You did. No?
The only work I've done outside of Fight Night Picks, I wrote 2 articles for MMA on Point. I wrote 2 of their videos. That's the only work I've done outside of Fight Night Picks.
See, this guy is an entrepreneur, man. He's just doing his thing.
Let me tell you something. Between MMA Today and Loudmouth MMA, me and Craig used to have this joke, and if this gets back to them, they're not going to be happy about it. But we used to have this joke that Loudmouth MMA was like the Cleveland Browns coaching staff back in '95, where it was like Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, but it went 7. They went 7-9, or they made the playoffs one year. Never mattered. It was like, how can you put this much talent in one place and not be the next big thing? But it never happened over there.
Well, MMA Today was even a worse version of that, right? It doesn't even exist anymore. And I think a lot of people, if you go back and look at websites, MMA websites, they can learn from that. And I see a lot of MMA websites right now making the same exact mistakes that MMA Today made. And eventually those guys will be gone too, man. Man, if you're going to start your own thing, just start your own thing and just do that. And then build yourself up and learn, reach out to people. This is the part of the show where we just give advice to just people that don't care. But yeah, that's what you should do, man, because that's what I did. I just did my own thing, and I did some work with like certain websites, and and it grew and it became better, and I improved, and now I'm here, but I'm really nowhere, to be honest with you, right? At the same time. But I love working with these guys. You know what I mean? You can see some of my interviews over there on their channel. They have their own shows. John has a show with them. They have, the the fight predictions, go check those out, man. I'm looking. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't watch all the fight predictions, but there's certain ones I'm interested in matchups. Where do I go first? Fight Night picks. So go check them out. Go subscribe. John has something to add. Let's do it.
Well, one thing I think as far as advice goes, JHK has done this better than almost anybody in the industry. And real quick, MMA Today launched Nolan King, so it can claim that fame. But JHK, as far as I know, has a lot of friends and not a lot of enemies. He works with a lot of different people, treats them well, acts like a nice, normal guy. So he makes a lot of relationships and doesn't rub anybody the wrong way. I think that's the way to do it. That's not the way I did it, but that's the way you should do it because that's the way JHK did it. So that would be my advice. Follow his lead, not mine.
Yeah, not everybody's gonna like you. So at the end of the day, just be real with the people you're real with. So we'll end it with that. Craig, appreciate you. John, we're gonna get you back on. Craig, this is a great